So Frank, have we come to this place in our country where if you hold a political ideology, whether you're red or blue or any color in between, that you don't typically buy certain products or believe in certain products because the political ideology doesn't line up? That doesn't make any sense to me. What do you think about that?
It makes no sense at all. And I've struggled with this one because we built we'll talk more later about some of the things we're building, but we started building a prototype out in Indiana, and Indiana is a pretty red state. And I would talk to people about their car choices or their transportation modes, and there were so many people that were for years against electric cars, let's say. And now these shop stewards, they all have these F-150 Lightnings. And they say, look, it just comes down to the numbers. I can charge it at home. It's cheap to charge it. And I really like the way it rides. And yeah, I'm not towing long hauls because, electric vehicles aren't good for towing long hauls. But I just need to go 60 miles from home to work every day. And I've seen that across platforms. It's like there's something out there that causes this mechanism for people to feel a certain way about products. And the truth be told, they've never even tried a lot of these products. So it's definitely a hotbed issue currently in this country, but it's never made any sense to me.
Yeah, so we're recording this prior to the 2024 presidential election, but this won't be released until after a few weeks after the election. But so it's like if you're Republican, you're not allowed to drive electric cars. If you're Democrat, you're not allowed to drive a diesel truck. Like those things don't make any sense to me. Although I think that if we dig a little bit deeper, I think there's some like every stereotype is based on some form of reality. But you are in the part of what you want to do is build. You've got an electric boat business, Holovi. So like that, you were on the like you were in the front lines of this in Indiana because that's what you were dealing with. So what was it like? I mean, when did you come to this realization that this doesn't make any sense and people should be able to choose products irrespective of their political ideologies?
Well, it's also like, where do you build things in America too, right? I mean, you can't build prototype boats in New York and you can't build them in Los Angeles. In fact, you can't even build fiberglass boats in California because most of the things that are used, some of the things that are used in the building of these boats aren't even allowed or permitted for sale in the state of California. So I definitely take an approach that this is a big country and there's a lot of really good workers out there. There's a lot of skilled labor. And it's a shame to see that when you do introduce a technology and people do try it, they tend to like it. And I think another part of it is that people don't really know where power comes from because it's so readily available in the United States. We have power. It's interesting. We were getting ready for this call today and we had a power interruption, which is something that doesn't really happen that often where we're recording today. However, power is so abundant. In other places in the world, people think about power every day. They think about what they're going to charge, how they're going to charge it, when they can keep lights on, when they can have the air conditioning on. Refrigeration becomes a key factor. We have such an abundance of power. We really don't know where it comes from. We take it for granted. And that's something that happens across state lines, right? No matter what state you're in, you have an abundance of power. We have this really beautiful infrastructure in this country, not only to keep people healthy and service them, but also to build things and create manufacturing because we do have power. You go to places like the Middle East, power is really expensive because they don't have any natural resource for it. So they have to go make it in really expensive ways. So I think a lot of it comes to education and information and how that gets spread, and it all trickles down to the product that people buy.
Well, we're talking with Frank Heidinger on the show today. Thank you guys for tuning in, listening to The Root of All Success. Frank's an ocean lover. He's an explorer, producer, and entrepreneur. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Holovi. It's a U.S.-based mobility company designing, engineering, and building high-performance recreational watercraft. And it's pretty cool. If you look at it, I'm a former boater, grew up with boats as a kid, and owned a couple of boats as an adult. Looking at the boats that his company makes, Holovi, is pretty cool. But prior to founding that, he was on the founding team for Parley for the Oceans, which is an environmental organization working to repurpose ocean plastic. So this guy, Frank is really involved in power, sustainability, cool electric power, boats. Like, how did you go from, like, you were doing this hospitality stuff before you got into this? So how did you make that jump?
Yeah, so tell the story often. So 2012, I'm walking down Grand Street and I see shark fins in the window of a specialty shop, and I thought, I can't believe these things are still. I mean, I'm not all for government involvement, but sometimes there's products that you just shouldn't, that are just not good. um, you wouldn't want to see dogs on the shelf for food. You wouldn't, So I saw this product and said, I got to do something to kind of get involved here. And I didn't quite know what to do. And so I used some of the resources that I had to fund a campaign to make shark fin products illegal in the state of New York. Subsequently won that. And so Massachusetts and New Hampshire and most of the eastern seaboard, excluding Florida for a while, but now Florida is even included in that. Shark fin products are different than fishing products, right? They're products that are they're harvested in the wild, and just the fin is cut off a shark, and the rest of the shark is left to drown. And it's a horrific kind of practice. It's something that shouldn't be accepted, and it's a big waste. So that was how I started making the transition from hospitality to, call it, activism or environmental protection. And then, like you mentioned, I worked with Parley for the Oceans for the better part of a decade, building out and producing events for them to showcase the material of this pervasive material called plastic that doesn't get managed by municipalities around the globe and is just choking waterways. And so finding a long-term resource for that was important to what the work we did. And in the process of being around material developers, but also traveling around the world and being able to get on waterways and see how, and I don't say this in any derogatory way, but we're very lucky in this country. Um, we live in a very safe society relative to other societies, and we have an abundance of services available to us. And you go around the world, and that's just not the case. Um, we have municipalities that clean waterways. We have volunteer groups that clean waterways. We have a management system which isn't the best when it comes to sanitation, but it's pretty good globally. There are places that have none of that. And so plastic literally chokes the waterways of entire communities. And being able to clean that up, you need boats. And so when you're on boats and you see the types of boats, they're usually very old boats. They haven't been updated or changed in 20, 30 years, many of these boats. And then you think, well, we're creating a solution for one problem, but on the other hand, we're using these boats which are not even the latest technology, because every technology's gotten better. You stop at a light, in a gas car, and your engine shuts off. Well, all of these technologies have aggregated in boating too, right? And so even the dirtiest diesel is cleaner today than it was 30 years ago. But none of that exists in most of the world, right? There's large stretches of the world where that doesn't exist. And so I was thinking, well, what if we could find a more renewable way for short range mobility on the water? And that opened up the experiment, which became a reality, of a company, which we call Holovi.
Nice. And so Holovi is building what looks like a platform boat, or we would refer to it maybe as a pontoon, although it doesn't look like it sits on pontoons. It's fiberglass, but it's a platform boat, recreational boat that does about 30 miles an hour, which is pretty fast on the water. Like, it looks pretty fun, and it's powered by an electric motor.
That's correct. Yeah. So fully electric. And our goal from day one was to create a somewhat new category of boating. And when I say hybrid, I don't mean the power, I mean the experience. So you have these pontoon boats that you mentioned, which are these big deck boats that are relatively inexpensive and are great because you can get people out on the water. Families can go out 8 or 10 at a time. You can spend the whole day out on the water. But they don't have any naval architecture. So there's limits to what they can do on the water. And then you have the center console, which is, there's multiple categories of center consoles that run from $100,000 up to millions of dollars. And we thought, well, could we marry that experience from both of those and power it with a renewable energy resource like electric? And that was the undertaking, which took several years in research and development to finally come to the hull we have, the length we have, the beam we have, and the overall deck plan that we have in our current offering.
So yeah, I guess I wasn't paying close enough attention to realize that it was a center console deck boat built very similar to a pontoon, but it has the best of both worlds. And you're in Florida, right? You're in Miami, so are these boats built in Indiana? Is that the story?
So no, we built a prototype in Indiana. We are building some boats with a really respected boat maker up in Maine called Lyman Morse. And then we're also building additional boats down in Slidell, Louisiana, with a really reputable boat builder there. So we have several boat builders around the country, all American made, all American labor force, all American design team, all American engineering team. And so as we scale into delivery production for 2025 and 2026, we have multiple manufacturing facilities that will be able to produce these boats.
Very interesting. So, I guess a question I would have is electricity and water.
Yeah.
It seems to be like it's a big issue. There was just recently we had Hurricane Helene came through Florida and then North Carolina and Tennessee and did tons of devastation. But I remember seeing some of the news talking about when the water surge hit parts of Florida, electric cars that were sitting still would get the salt water in it and they would catch on fire. So how do you protect against that in a an application like a boat?
It's a good question. Anytime there's a catastrophic failure or an incident like that, it has to be taken really seriously. But the reality is that, events like that do occur across platform. There are diesel engine. There are We've been using electric power in subways. Some subway cars catch fire sometimes, right? Um, the reality is these systems are very safe. There are going to be exceptions to the rule where, and you also don't know what were the conditions. I know there was a video that went around on a boat in Tampa, kind of scorched the whole house, right? And that's a shame, and I'm glad no one was hurt in that event. But these are really, really rare occurrences. They do get passed around the internet, but it's the same video being passed around. This is not something that you can also look around the internet where you have people going full submersion with Tesla Plaids and Tesla Cybertrucks and Ford F-150s. And they literally submerge, they go underwater completely, and they come back up and there's no issue. So truth be told, these systems are all IP rated for submersion. And there's a lot of protections in place to keep water out of those compartments. Now, failures do occur at every level of manufacturing. Whenever you make something, there is a risk. There is a small risk that something could go wrong in the future. This happens on airplanes. This happens on planes, trains, automobiles, and it happens with blenders. The blender catches fire in the kitchen. So, there's those accidents do happen, but I would say industry wide, they're very, very rare. And there's usually some other contributing factor that's usually not reported that leads to something that occurs like that.
What about the recharging? I mean, I can't imagine. Well, I can't imagine because I don't know about it, but it probably does exist. Are there charging stations like there are now for electric cars at gas stations? Are there charging stations going to be put at marinas and docks so that you can charge your boat without taking it out of the water, or is it
Yeah.
you have to take it out of the water to charge it?
No, no. So it's pretty straightforward. So the fundamental difference between boat traffic or a day on a boat and the way you use a car are very, very different. So cars go what we call point to point to point to point, right? Which means if you want to start in New York and end up in Indiana, you need to figure out where you're going to charge your vehicle or you're going to put gas in your vehicle along the way. Now, we know that gas stations are everywhere, so that's obviously a more ideal solution. Look, truth be told, I drive a Ford F-150.
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur running multiple businesses, effective communication is critical for me. I've tried all kinds of outreach tools over the years, but none have compared to Dubb when it comes to driving real results, and that's DUBB. I was one of Dubb's first users. I think it was like 7 years ago when they first launched, and I've been a loyal customer ever since. Dubb has completely transformed my prospecting, my client communication strategy, and here's why. Dubb makes it simple to record personal video messages and share them across email, SMS, social media, and more. And this brings back the face-to-face connection that's missing from most digital outreach. And what happens is my prospects instantly feel more engaged when they can put my face to my name. I end up building a stronger relationship faster by incorporating these video messaging into my workflow. Dubb also provides tracking and analytics so I can see exactly who engages with my videos and how they respond to them. Their automation and their CRM features help me nurture leads and close more deals. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right, as entrepreneurs. So after using Dubb for years, I absolutely can't recommend them enough. I mean, Ruben, those guys over there are phenomenal. I love Darius. They're all great guys. It's become an invaluable tool that I depend upon to run my businesses efficiently. And if you want to boost your outreach and see amazing results like I have, head over to therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb, that's DUBB, and you can try it completely for free. No credit card required. You get the first 50% off your first 2 months, by the way, if you use my link. You need to take your prospecting to the next level with video messaging from Dubb. They're my go-to sales communication platform for nearly 7 years and counting. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dubb. Try it for free, no credit card required, and you'll get 50% off your first 2 months as well.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
I tow our boat with a Ford F-150. It's a V8. It takes gasoline. I swear by it. I swear by it, right? So this is kind of like when we go back to the top of the conversation, we talk about you can be both things, right? You can see the value of an electric boat and tow it with a gas vehicle, right? Those two things don't preclude each other, right? They don't cancel each other out. The reality is the technology is not there to tow long haul heavy loads with electric motors. It would take, I did a trip recently where I went from California to Georgia, towed the boat myself, something I've gotten very familiar doing when you're in this business. And it took me 3 days. You know why? You whisk across this country. The roads are great. You fill up whenever you need it. And that's what it is. That's because that's the infrastructure of the day. However, I can take our boat, and any of our customers can take their boat out, run it 30 to 50 miles in a day, come back to their dock and plug it into their shore power, which was there before they even considered buying an electric boat. Because, by the way, every boat made in the world has batteries. It just has low voltage batteries. Sometimes they're 12 volt, 24 volt, 48 volt systems. But the electronics on boats, the radio that you play, the flushers in the bathrooms, the water pumps, the bilge pumps, the navigation systems, the walkie-talkie systems, lighting, that is all controlled by batteries, right? Now you can recharge those batteries with your motor running. So when your engine's running, it's acting as a generator and it's going to create energy and it's going to recharge your 12 volt battery. But they still need energy. So when you go to any dock in coastal America, you see pedestals in every dock, and those pedestals are there to recharge 12 volt batteries. The same can be for us, meaning we have larger capacity batteries, so the charging time is longer. You're looking at 240, 50 amp, which is a pretty standard marina power configuration. You plug in our boat, you don't need a special charger. You buy what's called a level 1, level 2 charger from Walmart, $79. And you plug it in and you can recharge your boat in 8 to 10 hours, which means if you go out on Saturday afternoon with the kids, you're ready to go Sunday morning. If you only have 110 available, it does take longer. It takes 24 to 30 hours to fully charge your batteries. But again, that power is already there. So the infrastructure in the coastal world is there. The infrastructure is lacking in lakes and rivers and waterways that are on the inside of the country. Some of those marinas do have power, but some of them don't. And so one of the things we're working on is growing that power infrastructure. But again, you don't need fast chargers, what they call level 3, because you're not going to go somewhere, charge your boat for 2 hours or an hour, and then keep going, right? This model that we've built is a purely recreational day watercraft. So it's pretty much you're either trailering your boat to a local lake, you're putting it in for the day. If you're in Florida, like here, these boat launches are packed on a Saturday morning, right? Everyone's lining up, putting their boat in the water. They go out for the day. They spend the day on the water. They come back after sunset. Boat ramps busy again. Take their boat back to wherever they store it. Wherever they store it will typically have power. So the charging is not something we've ever had an issue with.
Yeah, well, as after I asked the question and you started explaining it, I realized, well, duh. Like at every dock that I've ever docked a boat in, or I kept my boat in a marina one summer, and the marina I had it in, they beat up my boat pretty bad, put dents in it, so I had to had to take it out of there. But for the most of my boat ownership life, I kept it on shore and took it to the lake. And yeah, I kept it on a trickle charger.
That's right.
All the time.
That's right.
Like
That's right.
duh. Like yeah. So
and again,
charging is not a big issue. And then houseboats, if they stay in a marina, which those houseboats don't usually move, I mean they're plugged into 50 amp all the time anyway. So the
right.
danger of that I had in my head of like charging an electric boat really doesn't even make any sense because it's already there. Like
no,
you said,
and
the infrastructure is there.
The standard car charger, which is called the JL1772, that looks like a gas pump. You just plug it into the side of the car. Tesla has a different one. They have a unique configuration, but the standard in the industry, with the exception of Tesla, is this car charger. And these car chargers are you can buy them on Amazon. They'll come tomorrow. Like I said, you get a cheap one for $39. You get a really good one for $79, and they last forever. I've had one charger on board for a year and a half, and it works in every marina, everywhere we go, whether we have 110 20 amp, 110 30 amp, 240 40 amp, 240, like it works, and they're consistent. The only thing that changes is the charging rate, meaning goes faster if you have a higher amperage.
So what's next? I mean, is Holovi, is it just one model, or are you going to be building this model in different configurations? Are you going to go into more of a speedboat too, or like a ski boat or a wake boat?
So wake boats are being done in electric. They're terribly expensive because one of the reasons we chose the hull that we did, we have this trimaran hull, which again has this, like when you look at it visually, it has that kind of pontoonish look. Even though you're right, it's a composite. Like most of the boats, it's a fiberglass composite, like you see on most boats that are in the water, and it does have naval architecture involved. One of the downsides to electric, if there is one, is that the shape of the hull determines the capacity, your running capacity, right? So when you're thinking about what's the recreational day experience, you got to really seriously think about, and we did, and it took a year to really get it right, was how do I reduce the resistance? Because again, when you think about land and moving a car or a truck over land, there's multiple gears. There's not constant load. You have inertia, right? Car moving at 70 miles an hour, you put it in neutral, it just keeps going, right? So there's not a lot of resistance there once you get to speed. In boats, you take from being a boat owner, you take your hand off the throttle and the boat stops, which means there's a tremendous amount of constant load in one gear that is being applied there. And so if your hull is not efficient, then your batteries and your range is not efficient. And so to answer your question, we really like the trimaran configuration. We are building commercial catamarans for municipality use. There are about $300 million in active bids currently across the country in many, many states, over 18, 19 states now, that are looking to make their ferry services more renewable, going towards like 2050 goals. And so we are building catamarans for people moving, right? We're building our recreational 24-foot boat, and we're actually looking to go smaller because as you move into the center of the country, not everybody wants a 24-foot boat. Not everybody has the F-150 to trailer it, right? So, there's a lot of people in this country that want to get out on the boat, but they have a Ford Explorer, and that is a towing capacity of 3,500 pounds or something like that. So we're actually building models that are going to go smaller. So we're going to see a 20-foot and 18-foot, same trimaran configuration, similar deck configuration, just obviously on a smaller platform. But I really like where that's going because that means you need smaller battery capacities, shorter charging times, same range, lower price, and price is a big factor.
What about personal watercraft?
Personal watercraft are something that I'm not really interested in personally because they require a tremendous amount of power. The thing about boats is, 18 knots on a boat's a nice speed, 25 knots on a boat's a nice speed. If you need to go from, you got to go 8 miles, and we got some customers down in this lake in Georgia called Lake Oconee, right? And people live in these communities and they go, there's a few restaurants that are on the water. And so those restaurants are like, between 6 and 8 miles from their community dock, right? And so they want to go to the restaurant at 20 knots. They want to dock, they want to have dinner, and then they want to go home at, maybe 16, 17 knots and, take in the cool breeze at night. Okay, great. So that's a really good case for the type of use we want to fit into, right? So when we think about the amount of capacity we want to have, personal watercraft that you mentioned, people want to go fast. When you go fast with electric, like the speeds that you want to go on a typical personal watercraft, you want to be going 40, 50 miles an hour. It's just, I live here in the Biscayne Bay. I see it all the time. There's a lot of people that shouldn't be on jet skis, but they are, and they're all going too fast. And when you build something with electric and you get a customer who wants to just go fast, they're just going to blow those batteries out. And so it really makes sense for the model we've chosen, which is that recreation, mixed use. You got your no wake speed, you got your I'm having fun and moving speed, you got your on anchor, you got your music, and it's all renewable, and it's all low cost, because if you do a cost comparison to what it costs to like run a standard 200 horsepower outboard, you're looking at $100 to $150 a day minimum for gas. Gas is $6-7 now in marinas. You can use our boat, same thing. It's going to cost you $11 in power, meaning you pay the electric bill, you plug it in at home, and it's included, right? It's 11 cents per kilowatt hour. So 100 kilowatts is $11. If you're in a marina and you're paying for your slip, often shore power is included in the cost of the slip. So you'll actually never have to pay for gas. Now, marinas will get smart and they'll start to put in little fees, but it's still not going to amount to the amount of money you spend on, the gas equivalent, if you will.
It's very interesting. I would never have thought about this, man. So what gave you the original idea for this?
So I was part of this group called Parley, and we did a lot of activation back in Paris around the COP21 climate summit, which is at the moment that occurred. I believe that was back in 2018 or so, or 19. It was really momentous because it was just the biggest nations in the world coming together and saying, hey, whether you believe X is changing Y, or we know that there's definitely a better way to power things. And so can we make the grids in our countries, in these big, power consuming countries, more renewable? And so our boat's not geared towards the customer today. Like, we have customers today, but we're really thinking about what's the world going to look like in 2050, because we're going there, whether we like it or not. I hope to make it. I hope you make it. But whether we make it or not, the world's going to look different, right? And it's probably going to look better. Things are going to work better. There's going to be more seamless, connectivity. And so when we're thinking about what is the grid going to be like, if the grid is more renewable by 2050, then every time you plug in an electric boat, you're part of a solution. And again, this is to say there's nothing wrong with gas boats. We love them, right? We have them. We're on them all the time. And there's a wide range of gas boats that you couldn't build an electric equivalent. But on this particular category, which happens to be the largest category in America, and that's the thing to focus on, day boating on this, like 3 to 4 hours, family and friends out on the water, enjoying nature. Why the hell wouldn't you want to do that for less money, better for the environment? No matter where you stand, if you can just power things at a lower cost, then it's better.
So an equivalent boat, like let's talk about price of these boats, and I know price is different based on when people listen to this, because prices change. But we're recording this at the end of 2024. For a Holovi boat versus an equivalent, I'm assuming it's more expensive because electric cars for equivalents are generally more expensive. So I'm assuming the same thing was with the boats. But can you give us a sense of the pricing?
Yeah, so it depends on what you want, right? It's a good question. I always find these comps to be really difficult to talk through. So truth be told, if you want a center console at the same length that's gas, just a pure entry level center console, you're in the $125,000 to $175,000 range. Put gas in that, it'll run, it'll take you where you want to go. You'll have more range on that boat than you'll have on an electric boat. That's for sure. If you buy a entry level pontoon, that's like medium level pontoon boat, there's a lot of limitations on where you can take that boat, right? So that's one of the limiting factors. They're in that $80,000 to $100,000 range. If you get a nice one, medium range. If you buy a fully kitted out pontoon boat from one of the top companies in the country, most of these boats are made here, like ours. They run $225,000, $300,000. I've seen them. Of course, they have a lot of horsepower on them. They're kind of overpowered and a little silly, but that's fine. People like that. They want to move faster. That's your thing. Go for it. So we're kind of more expensive, but depending on how you compare the category, because I would consider our boat to be kind of a top end. I wouldn't call it a luxury vehicle, but I would definitely say it's like top end because of the materials it's made from, the finishes, the overall experience you can have, and the versatility that you can kind of charge it everywhere and you never have to put gas in it again. And your maintenance costs are probably 10% less per year. So that's probably where the differentiating factors are. Like maybe on the sticker price, it's 20 or 30% higher than something that's truly equivalent in gas, right? But on the other end, those gas boats typically cost around 15 to 20% of their MSRP to operate every year. And that includes maintenance, gas, the general things you have to do, cleanings, all those things. Now, you still have to clean the boat, you still have to maintenance the boat, but it's very, very limited. So instead of 15 or 20%, you're like 5 or 6%. And you do that you compound that annually over the cost of, let's say, a 5-year boat owner or a 10-year boat owner. And so it actually ends up becoming less expensive.
So I want to kind of pivot the conversation to the idea of success, because it sounds to me like this Holovi company is going to be very successful, already has a lot of success, and you're building for the long range. How do you define that word success personally? What does that mean to you, Frank?
Yeah, I think success is about being able to design and build things that can have a positive cross-culture impact for perpetuity, right? And so for really long periods of time. So essentially, we always talk about these ideals of like wanting to leave our community, our earth, better for the next generation, right? We want our kids to have a better life than we had. And even if that's just an incremental shift, even if that's just a little bit, we want each generation to do better, to have more opportunity. And so success should really be driven on the fact of like, did you deliver something that was part of that coming true, right? Did the success of your business mean that we kept the waterway clean, or we got more people on the water that wouldn't have been there? Or, is the next generation going to be smarter about the way that they use energy, buy energy, share energy? And so if we're leaving the place a little bit better than we found it, then I think we can call ourselves successful.
So, based on that definition, do you think you're a successful person?
I'd like to think that long term, that's what people will say. Then again, I don't necessarily get that involved in that because I try to just focus on product development. I'm very much, we talked about hospitality in the top of the call. I've always geared towards the experience. Like if you can deliver a better experience, people will enjoy your product more, whether that's going to a concert or buying a boat or buying a pair of shoes. For example, what we built with Parley were shoes made out of ocean plastic. So instead of buying raw material from a factory in Taiwan that was made from a petrochemical, which again, no issue there, right? Like it is what it is. Most of the clothes we wear have nylon filaments in them because they're made from these products. Like I'm wearing a shirt now that's got nylon filaments in it at some level, right? There's some stretch to it. That means there's nylon. But we were able to solve a problem, which is that there was waterways that were being polluted and clogged by this abundance of waste that wasn't being managed. And we took it and we turned it into something that someone on the other side of the world could put on their shoe and go running in. Now, long term, that's success because we're finding solutions to the problems. Again, all of our problems are created, but the idea is how fast are we going to go, okay, we've caused this problem, we found a solution, and now we're going to scale the solution and we're going to make it a household practice.
Well, I want to encourage people to go check out your company. It's holovi.com. That's spelled Halevai, holovi.com. And you can also follow them on Instagram at Holovi Power. And Frank, it's been a pleasure having a conversation with you. I want to give you the opportunity to have the last word on the show today. So anything you want to say, this is your shot.
Thanks for that. I do really appreciate, Jason, you taking the time to hear more about our product. I guess end on a high note, which is that let's keep building things in this country. It is not the easiest thing to do, but it is possible, and it is. And I'll without getting sappy, I'll say that the dream of being able to sit down, form a team, design something, whatever it is, whether you're an artist, an entertainer, a musician, an engineer, and be able to take that idea that happens in your head or in a group of heads sitting around a table and make that a reality is something that makes this country really, really special. And I think that we've maybe not done enough of that over the course of the last 30 years. We've watched a lot of that innovation go elsewhere. It started to come back, I think, in the last 10 years. We've seen a lot of movements, technology movements, innovation movements formed here in America. And I always like to end on that spirit of like, we build things, like people come here to build things and make successful stories. And I'm just hoping to be a small part of that.
Well, there you have it. That's Frank Heidinger, CEO, founder of Holovi. We're glad that he was on the show today. Such a pleasure having a conversation with him. Go check it out at holovi.com. That's HALEVAI.com. Go check him out. And thank you. Thank you very much for listening to this show. Thank you for tuning in each week when I interview successful entrepreneurs about their products, their services, their take on the world. And I want to harken back to what we said at the very beginning of the top of the show. Your political ideology shouldn't have anything to do with the products that you choose. Like if you go try out an electric boat, go try an electric car, go try organic food, go try a diesel pickup truck, go try some pork rinds, whatever it is, go try something that you think that your color of political persuasion is not supposed to do. That's crazy. There's too many things we're divided over in this country. And we just came through a crazy election by the time this show came out. And who knows who's going to be president? I don't know what's going to happen, but like I know who I want to be president, and I know who I'm voting for. But no matter what happens, like why are we going to divide on stupid things like products? Like there's so many other things that we could have arguments about, but not on products. So congratulations to Frank and his team for building something awesome. Go check him out. Follow him on Instagram. Check out his website. When you do, just let him know you heard about this on The Root of All Success. Please tune in again next time when I talk with yet another very successful entrepreneur about his or her journey to success. Until then, as always, I am the real Jason Duncan, and Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.